Here in America, the term station wagon is very much a naughty word. Thankfully, if you're one of the few people who simply refuses to drive an SUV, Volvo has been one of the few manufacturers who have stood by the wagon body style. And today, I've got the newest member of the station wagon family from Volvo. This is the 2020 V60 Cross Country. Based off of the second generation V60, which was introduced last year, it gets all the usual modifications that's associated with the cross country badge. It's got a raised suspension by nearly 3 inches, all the extra black plastic cladding, and generally just a more rugged overall feel and image. So the big question I want to answer, if you guys are looking for a new family vehicle and you simply refuse to drive an SUV, how does the new V60 Cross Country stack up? That's what we're here to find out. In the SUV crazy world that we live in, it's pretty easy to forget about the Volvo V60. I mean, why would you be looking at a station wagon when Volvo has this perfectly excellent XC60 crossover at your disposal, which is the company's best seller here in America with over 30,000 of those sold in 2019. And when you look at the competitive set for the V60, really there's only one true competitor, and that's the A4 all-road. BMW, as you guys know, doesn't offer a 3 Series wagon right now. Mercedes doesn't offer a C-Class wagon. And this one here is the new cross-country version. So this is the one that has the extra cladding. It's got an extra nearly 3 inches of additional ground clearance. The V60 is one handsome looking wagon, but the cross-country version has its own unique styling elements, as you'll see here. Just like the S60 in which the V60 is based, you can see the all-new version has the usual styling treatments that we expect from Volvo's current lineup. In fact, the entire lineup of Volvo vehicles now has been completely refreshed. They started back in 2016. And as you can see, the second generation V60 Cross Country takes everything that we like about the regular V60 and tries to make this kind of more like Volvo's version of the Subaru Outback with all the cladding and the extra ground clearance. The one thing I particularly like is Volvo's current front end. You can see they have the Thor's Hammer full LED headlights with LED low and high beams, LED daytime running lights, LED turn signals. You also get these LED fog lights that's included on the cross country version. And you can see here all the cladding here at the lower end. It is a tasteful amount. There are some manufacturers that simply just put too much cladding that make the vehicle look like it's trying a little bit too hard. This particular one here has the Cross Country Pro package, which includes this stainless steel scuff plate that you see at the lower front fascia. You also get that on the side skirts as well. So overall, this is raised up almost 3 inches. As I said, Volvo says this car has 8.3 inches of ground clearance. However, looking at it from this angle, you might be wondering where is that number coming from, because this vehicle is not quite as tall as I expected it to be. In fact, compared to the regular V60 wagon, this is about 9 inches taller at 59 inches overall. Compared to something like a Subaru Outback, this is roughly about 6 inches shorter. Volvo's own XC60 is about 6 inches taller overall. So this still kind of gives you that wagon height that a lot of people like. Now, moving this vehicle to the scalable product architecture meant that Volvo could increase the overall length of this thing. Its wheelbase has been stretched to 113 inches long, at an overall length also of 188 inches long. This is about 6 inches longer versus the previous generation model, which Volvo offered up until 2018. Remember, they discontinued the cross-country V60 name in 2019. There was no 2019 version. Now, I especially like the wheels that you find on this particular one here. The Cross Country Pro package includes these 19-inch specific wheels with the black inner spokes. They're wrapped in 235 with all-season tires. If you guys don't want these bigger wheels, an 18-inch wheel is standard. You can see here all the extra cladding here, but it is a very tasteful amount. And I also like the stainless steel scuff plate that you get on this rocker panel that's included as part of the Cross Country Pro upgrade package. Now, compared to the XC60, which is their compact SUV that sells roughly 3 times the amount of that vehicle, this car is about 4 inches longer. So it's longer, but it's also narrower by about 3 inches. So it's a little bit more of a car-like driving experience, which is why a lot of people end up choosing a wagon, because it feels more like a car than a crossover. Now, looking at the rear, you can see the taillights are carried over from the V60. They're full LED design, which I really like. The T5 engine is also the only engine upgrade, which we'll talk about in just a moment. And I also like the nicely finished rear bumper area here with the dual integrated exhaust. You can also get an accessory package that splits the exhaust that makes it look like a quad outlet. And the stainless steel scuff plate is also included here as part of that Cross Country Pro package. Looking at the trunk capacity, this is a wagon. You're probably wondering what's that like. This is on the smaller end if you're looking at cargo capacity. Now, compared to something like the Outback or the V90, you get roughly 10 to 15 cubic feet less, but still at 23.8 cubic feet with the seats up, it's still a pretty good amount. Now, the Cross Country Pro package also includes this nifty little divider here that flips up where you can hook up your groceries here. You can divide, stuff between there. It's a very sturdy divider here, and it hides nicely into the floor when not in use. If you lift this up here, you can see Volvo also includes a temporary spare tire, and when you want to fold down all the seats, when you fold down those seats, you get a total of 51 cubic feet of space, which is pretty usable still. It matches that of this car's closest competitor, which is the Audi A4 Allroad. Now, personally, I like the way the Cross Country looks, but if it were my money, I would go for the R-designed V60 with the sport appearance package you can get from the dealer that just makes this thing look exceptionally classy looking, especially in the bursting blue metallic color. That's probably the one that I would go for all along. Now, the Cross Country version is supposed to be like Volvo's answer to the Subaru Outback. You've got additional ground clearance, you've got the cladding, you've got standard all-wheel drive, which is similar to the Audi Allroad. However, unlike the Allroad, this has additional ground clearance, 8.3 inches versus 6.5. So you could theoretically take this off-roading to places where people would take their Subaru Outback or other compact crossovers, SUVs. You can't get this thing with like a low range or skid plate, so I probably wouldn't go too far off the beaten path. But the fact that Volvo gives you that kind of ruggedness as an option is a very unique one at that. They also offer the V90 wagon, which is again about 6 inches longer than this car. However, it gives you a little bit more, space on the inside versus this one. Now, in terms of the acceleration, this doesn't feel like a very fast wagon, so let's pop the hood and see what's powering this thing. When I think of a luxury branded vehicle, I expect the vehicle to have a lot more power than a mainstream competition model. Now, the Volvo V60 Cross Country only launches in America with just one engine choice. It's the T5 configuration, so you get a 2-liter turbocharged direct injection 4-cylinder. The supercharged engine from the T6 is not available in the V60 Cross Country. In fact, it was discontinued for 2020 on all the V60 models. So essentially you get 250 horsepower and 258 pound-feet of torque. Those numbers are pretty comparable to the Audi A4 Allroad, which also got a refresh for 2020. That makes 248 horsepower and 273 pound-feet of torque. Now, it all goes out through a one-choice only 8-speed automatic transmission, and every cross-country V60 is standard with the company's Haldex all-wheel drive system. So if you guys want all-wheel drive, you have to go for the cross-country because the regular V60 only comes with front-wheel drive as long as you don't choose that T8 Polestar engineered vehicle, which is introduced for 2020. That's a different review. Now, as I said, all-wheel drive is standard. Fuel economy is rated at 22 in the city, 31 on the highway. That's pretty good numbers. Premium gas is recommended. Volvo does not recommend to tow with this vehicle, but you could take it off-road, as I said, with up to 8.3 inches of ground clearance. And as this one sits, it weighs right around 4,025 pounds. So only 250 horsepower is not a lot, although compared to the Audi Allroad, this has 2 more horsepower, but it has roughly 20 more pound-feet of torque. And I did do that acceleration in comfort, so we can switch it over to dynamic mode, which really just alters the suspension tuning, the throttle response of the engine. There is a Polestar engineered tune that you can add from the dealer for $1,300, which supposedly alters the transmission tuning even further, adjusts the throttle response, and unlocks an extra power. You get a little bit more torque, 295 foot-pounds from what I've read. Haven't had a chance to drive that. I think Volvo should just make that standard. If you're looking for the T6 engine, unfortunately, it's not available, as I said, and that has 316 horsepower. It would drop the 0 to 60 time of this thing to the mid-5s. This is around 7 seconds. I've seen it as slow as like almost 8 seconds. It's lethargic compared to the A4 Allroad, which will do the same task in around 6 seconds. So Volvo really needs to do something about the power, because when you're buying a luxury branded vehicle, I demand certain things when it comes to the power. Now, obviously, power is one thing. Interior, that's another thing, and that's how it makes you feel. And this Volvo, as you can see, has a really nice interior, which let's dive a little bit deeper into the interior furnishings and see what differentiates this car from its competitors. When you buy a Volvo product, you also expect the interior to be very sophisticated, comfortable, safe, modern. And as you can see, just like the S60 in which I tested a couple of years ago, this has roughly the same interior with some noticeable differences. Now, first thing I want to show you guys, the door slam has a very solid thunk. So again, this is the scalable product architecture. It's a very nice platform that they use from everything from the XC90 all the way down to this smaller series of vehicles. When you start the vehicle up, you can hear it has that traditional noise. That 12.3-inch LCD display is actually standard. There was a time that Volvo would make this optional, but I also like how that's standard. You also get a 9-inch Sensus Connect infotainment system. This is the latest Volvo head unit here. It has been upgraded over the years, so the processor is quicker. It's much better versus the original XC90 that I tested a few years ago, but I will say it's still a little bit slow and laggy at times. And I also think it's a little bit complex, and there's a slight learning curve that you have to get over, especially if you guys have never been in a Volvo vehicle. Now, there's a reason why this vehicle here is significantly more expensive than a mainstream brand like a Subaru. This interior feels and smells much more expensive. It feels like you've bought a luxury car as opposed to a mainstream brand. The Cross Country Pro upgrade package that I'm sitting in here gives you this nice wood grain trim. That is a matte finish that looks really good with this blonde leather interior. You also got the tailored dashboard here with the real leather stitching on this part of the dash. Down here, it's just a soft touch injection molded plastic. I will say that most of the materials in here are very high quality, although I do not like the way the door panel on the upper portion here feels. I wish they'd stitched it in the same leather. You get the leather stitching on this part of the door handle, and then down here on the lower part, it is soft touch plastic, which is nice. And then the window controls, all four of the windows are up down. They feel also very high quality. However, the center console here is kind of covered in this very thinly slim piece of plastic that I don't particularly love. The console itself also doesn't feel very high quality. You do have some nice piano black plastic and more of that beautiful wood grain trim, but remember, some of the higher end Volvos kind of give you a nicer feeling center console with leather stitching and that crystal shifter. You're not going to find that in this model because it's the lower end version. Now, my tester also has a very expensive $4,000 Bowers & Wilkins sound system. As you can see here, it's that 15th speaker. So there are 15 total speakers and a total of 1,100 watts of power. Now, that's $4,000 versus $800 for the Harman Kardon sound system, which has 14 speakers but about 600 watts of power, so roughly half the wattage. The stereo is really, really nice. If you guys are an audiophile, you're going to want to tick that option box. It's one of the nicest stereos you can get in a car that's under $70,000, but at $4,000, it is definitely a very pricey upgrade. Now, putting the vehicle into reverse, you can see I like the backup camera that Volvo uses. It doesn't take up the entire screen, but the resolution and quality is excellent. You can see it also gives you a top-down 360-degree view, and you have automatic parallel parking, which is included if you guys go for that upgrade package that my tester has. It's a very nice resolution display. Basically what you expect in the luxury segment. The way this Sensus Connect screen works, you can see here, it does include things like Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. You noticed earlier, it took a second for this thing to actually start up the Apple CarPlay, so there's that lag that I was talking about. You also have factory embedded GPS, which is very nice, where it takes up a little bit more of the screen. Your audio sources are over here. I also really like how when you're scrolling through like satellite radio, for example, it shows you a little preview of what's playing. That's always been a Volvo thing. I think that's a really nice feature. A lot of other manufacturers in the luxury space do the same thing. The climate control is kind of buried in the screen over here. You can see there's a little bit of lag there. When I push the auto button here, push that, you can adjust the temperature here, and it's all fairly intuitive, but there are times where I found it a little bit lagging. You can see here, my tester also has 3-level heated seats and a heated steering wheel. However, it doesn't have cooled seats. If you want cooled seats, you have to check a box for a $2,200 luxury package that also includes the front seat back massage. The good thing is this is one of the few vehicles in the segment that offers massaging seats, but at already $57,000, I still have to add a $2,200 luxury package to get cooled seats. I think Volvo should have just included it in there, so there's a little bit less value there. Above me is a massive panoramic sunroof, which lets in a lot of light. Thankfully, it is standard. And the steering wheel, as you can see here, it's the typical Volvo steering wheel. It's a manual tilt and telescoping adjustment, but the leather feels really nice. I like the two-tone here with the black, the blonde interior. So overall, the inside of the V60 Cross Country is very premium feeling, has a lot of tech features like the fancy sound system, the heads-up display, but in terms of value, you can find a lot more of these premium features features on some of the lower end mainstream models where you don't have to pay extra for everything like the luxury brands. So like every other Volvo product, you get a lot of premium touches. My favorite feature is probably that Bowers & Wilkins sound system, which, you know, under $70,000, it's one of the best sound systems you can buy in the industry. This is rivaling stuff that you get from, you know, Audi's Bang & Olufsen, Mercedes's Burmester system. Bowers & Wilkins is really good, and it's probably worth every penny of the $4,000 if you guys are a huge audiophile, because that is still extremely pricey at $57,000 for the one that I'm driving. This is an expensive wagon, and it's not, you know, quite as roomy as all those crossovers that people are just absolutely obsessed about. The Volvo, you know, V60 does, you know, feel a little bit cramped when you're sitting in the front. The rear has decent legroom, but it's very comparable to something like, you know, a compact sedan, because remember, this is based on the S60 platform. It's still the scalable product architecture. Backseat space in the V60 Cross Country is very comparable to the last S60 that I sat in. When you get back here and shut the door, Volvo says you get around 35.2 inches of legroom, which is not bad. However, you should know that some mid-size competitors offer more space. This is very comparable to the A4 Allroad. There's a fair amount of headroom here. The V90 Cross Country, which is the bigger version of this car, which is roughly 5 inches longer, surprisingly only has an inch more legroom. Now, I wasn't happy to see there's a very large, massive tunnel here for the drive shaft. As a front drive based vehicle, I didn't expect something like this. My tester here has rear seat climate controls. It's got 4-zone climate control. That's part of the Cross Country Pro package, and heated rear seats, which are 3 levels. That's very nice. You have a nice armrest here that folds down that gives you a little bit of storage, and these pop out cup holders. But overall, the back seat is usable, not quite as roomy as, you know, some of the SUVs in the segment, but it is still very much usable for people who need to carry people in the back seat. And really, from behind the wheel, I don't notice that I'm sitting up that much higher. I mean, if I was driving the Subaru Outback that my spouse drives, I notice that I'm sitting up noticeably higher versus, you know, a legacy sedan. This feels like I'm driving just an S60. So really, you don't feel the additional ground clearance from when you're behind the wheel. It doesn't give you that higher seating position, which some of you may not like. You know, you may actually prefer to sit up a little bit higher versus this car. But again, it kind of reminds me again that I'm driving a car, which is the whole point of wanting a wagon like this. You're an anti-SUV person. You don't want a wagon, and that's completely understandable. Now, as I switch the drive mode here to dynamic, I basically only notice the steering gets a little bit slightly heavier, but this thing will still push. Ooh, when you really get on it. And the 8-speed auto, while it is a traditional torque converter automatic, it is nice that it has that. But I noticed the transmission can get a little bit dumbfounded at times. It doesn't shift very well in dynamic mode, where it's a little bit jerky at times. It is more responsive, but still slightly jerky. And the engine, it just sounds like there's a vacuum cleaner underneath there. This engine is just a really unpleasant sounding engine. I'll let you guys hear that again one more time. It's weird because I hear this thing when it shifts, you can feel the engine's power taper off. It almost like the engine goes to sleep for like a half a second as the transmission shifts gears, and then it wakes back up and you feel the surge again. It's just a kind of disappointing feel. It doesn't make me feel like I'm driving a special car because the engine is, you know, so uninspiring. It sounds like a vacuum cleaner. It feels sluggish. This is probably enough power for most people, but for me, when I pay the extra premium for a luxury badge, power, effortless power is what's important to me. Now, they used to offer the T6 engine upgrade last year in the V60. However, lack of sales for that engine, you know, caused Volvo to take it away. So if you want the T6, you need to go for the XC60, which most of you are probably going to do anyways. Now, handling wise, compared to the last XC60 I drove, you definitely notice you're sitting lower. It feels more car-like. It feels not sporty by any means, but that soft ride is what's going to sell you on a Volvo. This thing just feels very safe, very secure. It is quiet on the inside when you're not pushing the engine so hard. Visibility in here is excellent. You have, you know, the full suite of Volvo safety tech, like their automatic emergency braking with pedestrian detection and bicycle detection. However, if you guys are looking for their pilot assist adaptive cruise control, you have to spec up a $2,500 advanced package that my tester has that rolls in the adaptive cruise control. But you also have things like automatic emergency braking and, you know, blind spot detection, rear cross traffic braking and whatnot. The one thing this car is missing is auto lane change. Volvo, for some reason, doesn't do the auto lane change, but their pilot assist does work fairly well at keeping you centered in the lane on those highway, you know, cruises. So, you know, it shows you how advanced and how much Volvo focuses on safety, but they're not quite at the forefront. They're still kind of just hanging right there with the class leaders, but I think the Volvo should be pushing the envelope for technology and driver assistance tech a little bit further. We hear that they are working on that, of course, for the next generation of products. The seats in this one here, you know, after a week of driving, they're about as comfortable as I expect a lot of Volvos. My tester is, as I said, missing that luxury package that rolls in the cooled seats and the seat back massage on the front seat. So, you know, at 57 grand that it's missing that, it's kind of an insult, but that's kind of the case with a lot of luxury brands. Fuel economy may actually be a little bit better than the last XC90 that I drove. This is rated at 22 in the city, 31 on the highway. I've been averaging around 22 mpg in my mixed driving, which is fine, but not stellar. It's because I'm constantly dipping into the power. I would love to drive this thing with that Polestar engineered upgrade tune that you can get from the factory. I think Volvo should just make it as standard, especially if they're gonna only give us the T5 engine. Now, speaking of which, one of the reasons why you go for the cross country is because the all-wheel drive system is standard. If you guys are looking at a V60 with the T5 engine, it only comes with front-wheel drive. All-wheel drive is not an option. If you want all-wheel drive, they do offer the new T8 Polestar engineered V60, which looks fantastic, one of the most sexy-looking wagons you can buy. But that's almost $70,000, and there's a lot of other options you can choose from, you know, for that kind of coin. Now, because the station wagon is more of a niche body style, some of you may be thinking, oh, this is probably less expensive versus the comparable XC60 crossover. Well, that's where you might actually be wrong, because this car starts at $45,745, which makes the V60 Cross Country about $5,000 more expensive than an XC60. Now, you should note this comes standard with all-wheel drive versus Volvo's crossover comes with front-wheel drive for about $3,500 more. You can add all-wheel drive. Compared to the regular V60, the regular station wagon, not the cross country, this is also about $5,000 more expensive. So Volvo is charging you more, but you also get a lot more features. You get a wagon that I think is one of the most beautiful looking station wagons that you can buy. As you guys saw from the rest of this video, it drives extremely nice. It's got comfortable front seats. It's got a luxurious cabin. It's got all the tech features that you expect, just not necessarily all the value. Really, where the V60 Cross Country falls short for me is underneath the hood. I just think the T5 engine, while it's probably adequate for 80% of buyers, when I think of a luxury vehicle, I expect more effortless acceleration, and I wish that Volvo had offered the T6 powertrain. Unfortunately, sales of this vehicle have just been a lot less than what they expected, and demand of the T6 engine is a lot lower, which is why Volvo tried to simplify things with just the T5 powertrain. But if you guys are okay with the specs of this engine, I think there's a lot to like at this vehicle. Now, my tester here, of course, with all the other options, stickers for around $57,000. It's still missing the cooled seat option and the massage function, which would push the price over $60,000. At that price, it does make the V60 a little bit more expensive than the Audi A4 Allroad. And really, that's the car's main competitor, because for me, the Allroad is the quicker vehicle. It doesn't have as much ground clearance, however. The Audi only has about 2 inches less ground clearance versus this vehicle. So if you actually need to take your luxury crossover or wagon off-road, this is the one that you're going to want to do it in. Just be sure you don't pull up next to a Subaru Outback at a traffic light, because this wagon is not the quickest accelerating in the segment. With all that said, I hope you guys have enjoyed my full overview on the 2020 Volvo V60 Cross Country. If you're also looking to see the latest cars I'm testing, be sure to follow me on Instagram at Redline_reviews. Like us on Facebook, and as always, guys, please keep subscribing to the Redline Reviews YouTube channel for all the latest reviews. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you all in the next video.